Blackwood Hollow was one of those small, forgotten towns you hear about in rural America. Old wooden houses with broken fences, dusty roads that led to nowhere, and tired faces that had seen too much and hoped for too little. That was all Blackwood Hollow had left. The sun was setting behind the hills, but for a man named Ethan Carter, darkness had entered his mind a long, long time ago. Ethan sat near the edge of his farmland, a cigarette dangling from his lips. His eyes weren't focused on the dry, cracked earth below him. They were lost somewhere else entirely, drifting in dreams of a better life, a life far from this place. Nearby, a group of old men sat on rusty chairs, their voices low as they whispered stories the way old men do when the day is done. They spoke of an ancient legend, a story as old as the town itself. Years ago, one old man said, his voice a quiet rasp, a wealthy landowner lived here. When bandits came to raid the town, he took all his gold and buried it somewhere deep in the ground. But no one ever found it, another man added, shaking his head. A third man leaned in, his voice dropping to a near whisper. They say the treasure isn't guarded by humans anymore. They say it's protected by the Black Widow of Blackwood. The words floated on the evening air, pierced Ethan's ears. He slowly crushed his cigarette under the heel of his boot. His throat went dry. The Black Widow. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard it. The sound of gold coins falling, one after another. Clink, 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 and in between those tantalizing sounds, he heard something else. A woman's soft, chilling laughter. The next morning, without a word to anyone, Ethan walked toward the forest at the edge of town. The deeper he went, the darker the woods became. The sunlight struggled to break through the thick, tangled canopy of leaves above. Soon, he saw it in the distance, a small hut almost hidden by the trees. It belonged to Nathan Crowley, the most feared occultist in the entire region. Animal bones hung from the porch. Skulls dangled from tree branches like grotesque ornaments. The ground around the hut was stained with dried blood. Ethan hesitated. His heart screamed at him, go back. Turn around and go back now. But the greed that had taken root in his soul pushed his feet forward, one step after another, toward the hut. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of smoke, oil, and something rotten, something that turned his stomach. Nathan Crowley sat near a small fire, his eyes closed as if in meditation. Without opening them, he spoke, his voice cutting through the heavy silence. Tell me, boy, what hunger brought you here? There's a treasure in my town, Ethan said, his voice trembling slightly. I want it. Nathan opened his eyes. They were cold, devoid of any humanity. He began to draw strange, intricate symbols on the dirt floor with his finger and whispered, the treasure exists, but it no longer belongs to the living. Its owner is something else. I'll give you anything, Ethan said, his voice thick with desperation. A slow and settling smile spread across Nathan's face. Then listen carefully. I require 3 sacrifices. A pregnant hen, a pregnant goat, and a pregnant cow. And one more thing. He paused, his gaze boring straight into Ethan's soul. A pure young girl. Ethan's face turned pale, the blood draining from it. If anything is missing, Nathan warned, his voice low and menacing, whatever awakens from that ground will not spare you. Ethan whispered only one word, deal. In that single moment, he sold a piece of his soul. That night, Ethan sat silently at home, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. His wife, Sarah Carter, looked at his pale, drawn face and knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. Tell me, she asked softly, her voice filled with concern. And so Ethan told her everything. He told her about the treasure, the occultist, and the horrifying sacrifices required to get it. As he spoke, Sarah's face turned, as white as a sheet. "But where will we find a girl?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ethan slowly lifted his eyes and looked at her. A silent, terrible understanding passed between them. Sarah froze. "You're insane," she cried, her voice breaking. "Emily is my little sister. She's just a child." Ethan's voice became as cold as the grave. "She's not a child anymore. This is our chance, Sarah. Our only chance to get out of this miserable life." Sarah started to cry, her body shaking with sobs. "This is a sin. God will never forgive us for this." Ethan slammed his fist on the wooden table, making the plates jump. "What has God ever given us? Poverty, humiliation, nothing." Outside the house, the darkness seemed to grow thicker, more menacing. And somewhere far, far away, a woman's chilling laughter echoed through the night. The full moon was only 3 days away. Ethan bought the pregnant hen first, then the goat, then the cow. Each animal seemed strangely afraid, their eyes wide with terror, as if they sensed the horrible fate that awaited them. On the night of the full moon, Ethan, Sarah, and Emily walked deep into the forest. Emily walked silently behind them, her small steps heavy with a dread she couldn't understand. The forest felt alive, as if it was watching them, every tree a silent witness. Nathan Crowley was already there, waiting for them. A large ritual circle was drawn on the ground, the symbols glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Place the girl in the center," he commanded, his voice flat and emotionless. Sarah's hands trembled as she looked at her sister. Emily looked back at her, tears welling in her innocent eyes. "Let's go home, Sarah," she whispered, her voice pleading. Sarah couldn't speak. She was paralyzed by fear and guilt. The ritual began. Nathan chanted in a language Ethan didn't understand, his voice rising and falling in a disturbing rhythm. Suddenly, Emily collapsed to the ground. When she stood up again, she was no longer Emily. Her neck twisted at a slight, unnatural angle. Her eyes were half open, glazed over. Her lips were curled into a grotesque, inhuman smile. When she spoke, her voice was different, deeper, older. "Why have I been summoned?" Nathan, unfazed, asked calmly, "Where is the treasure?" The possessed eyes of the girl stared down into the ground. Behind the old church, under the great oak tree. Everyone there knew. That voice was not Emily's. Under the great oak tree behind the old church, the soil was darker than the rest, almost black. And there she stood, waiting for them. The Black Widow of Blackwood. She was a woman in a long, flowing black dress. Her skin was as pale as ash. Golden jewelry, necklaces, and bracelets covered her body like heavy chains. Her eyes were empty voids. There was no anger, no mercy in them. Only a deep, insatiable hunger. Ethan sacrificed the hen. Then the goat. Then the cow. The dark ground drank the blood greedily, as if it had been waiting for centuries for this moment. But suddenly, the Black Widow spoke, her voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "My thirst is not over." Nathan's face, for the first time, turned pale with fear. "What else do you want?" he asked, his voice shaking. Her empty eyes slowly turned toward the terrified girl standing at the edge of the clearing. "I want a human." In that instant, Emily ran. She bolted into the darkness of the forest, and no one could stop her. When Ethan and Nathan searched the surrounding woods, she was gone. Nathan whispered in pure terror, she was not destined to die tonight. The Black Widow's face contorted. For the first time, she seemed to feel something. pure, unadulterated rage. Without warning, she moved faster than a striking snake. Nathan didn't even have time to scream. His head fell to the ground with a soft thud. Ethan collapsed to his knees, sobbing. "I did everything for the money," he cried out to the terrifying figure. The Black Widow stood before him, a specter of death in the moonlight. "And that is why you will die." Moments later, Ethan was gone, swallowed by the darkness. Sarah tried to run, but her legs were crushed by fear, refusing to move. The Black Widow looked at her, her voice a final, damning sentence. "Greed never dies alone." The next morning, the town of Blackwood Hollow was shaken by a mysterious and horrifying incident. The local news reported 3 people missing. One occultist found dead, his head separated from his body. Strange ritual symbols were discovered in the forest, along with the slaughtered remains of several animals. Witnesses came forward, claiming to have heard a woman's laughter echoing through the trees all night. Emily was never found. Some people say she still wanders the forest, a lost soul. Others whisper a more chilling theory. They say she didn't escape. They say she was chosen. And even now in Blackwood Hollow, people whisper the legend. They say if you walk near the old oak tree late at night, you can still hear the clink of falling coins, and a woman laughing softly in the darkness. Because the Black Widow of Blackwood is still there, waiting for the next greedy soul. Watching, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.